This is a classic fairy tale called The Emperor's New Clothes. The emperor in this story was not interested in waging war or building castles, as most emperors are. He simply loved clothes. Here's a picture of the emperor. His fancy clothes. He loved clothes. It was well known that he spent most of the day trying on one costume after another to find which was most flattering to the rather generous royal figure. One day there came to the court a pair of rascals intent on making a little money and living an easy life. They let it be known that they were weavers. The cloth that we weave, they said, is so fine and its pattern is so intricate that only intelligent people can see it. Here's a picture of the two weavers there. You see that? Before long, the emperor heard of this. How very useful, he said to himself. If I wore a suit of that cloth, I would be able to tell at once which of my ministers were too stupid and ill-bred for their jobs. So he summoned the weavers before him. I would like a suit made of your famous cloth, he told them. No problem at all, replied the weavers, if we could just take a few measurements. Your Royal Highness is the figure of a man of 20. And here are the weavers taking measurements of the emperor. Next, the weavers ordered bales of costly silk and gold thread to weave, they said, into their famous cloth. They had 2 looms set up in a comfortable room. All day they sat in front of the looms, pretending to weave. The emperor was anxious to see how his suit was coming along, but although he knew that he was the cleverest man in the land, he was just a little worried that he might not be able to see the cloth. The emperor thought long and hard until he had an idea. Summon my chief minister, he cried. He can report to me on the cloth the weavers are making for me. Well, the chief minister couldn't see the cloth either, but he was worried that the emperor might dismiss him, so he pretended it was wonderful. There's a picture of his chief minister. Every day the weavers called for more silk and gold. They packed this away in their luggage, ready for a quick getaway. Soon the emperor sent his chancellor to inspect the work. Once again the poor man could see nothing at all, but he did not want to lose his job, so he said, It is beyond compare, he declared. Your Highness will be really delighted. The emperor hurried to the weaver's room and flung open the doors. He stopped dead. It was his worst nightmare. Only he, of all his court, was too stupid to see the wonderful cloth. His throat felt dry as he said, This cloth is too beautiful for words. He was pretending. At the end of the week, there was to be a grand procession. Naturally, it was expected that the emperor would wear clothes of the famous new cloth. The weavers were busy night and day, cutting thin air with huge pairs of scissors, sewing with invisible thread, and pretending to sew on buttons. Here's a picture of the emperor in his underwear, basically. On the morning of the grand procession, the emperor stood in his underwear while the weavers helped him on with his clothes. By the time he had walked up and down a few times, he had persuaded himself that he could almost see the costume and that it was very fine indeed. So it was that the emperor walked proudly out, wearing only his second-best pair of royal underwear. At first there was a stunned silence from the crowd lining the streets, but everyone had heard that only clever people could see the clothes, so first one and then the other, and then another spectator cried out, Oh, wonderful, superb, as the emperor passed. And so here's the picture of the emperor walking around with his underwear, and people are claiming how wonderful it is. Sometimes when everyone is making a lot of noise, there is suddenly a brief silence. In just such a moment, the voice of a little boy could be heard. But mother, he cried, the emperor isn't wearing any clothes. In that dreadful moment, the crowd realized that it was true, and they began to laugh. There's a picture of the emperor embarrassed now. He realizes he's not wearing any clothes. The crowd realized it was true. They began to laugh. The emperor ran in a most unroyal way back to the palace. It is said that the emperor never was quite so vain about clothes after that, and the two rascals, they had become so invisible as the emperor's costume and were never seen again. The end.